They said she was just the team medic. They laughed when she looked at the sniper rifle. When pirates attacked their research vessel in the Somali basin and their best shooters fell, Dr. Chen faced an impossible choice between following orders and watching her crew die. What happened next would shatter everything they thought they knew about the quiet woman who had spent months being dismissed as dead weight. The morning sun blazed over the Indian Ocean as the research vessel times Neptune's Pride times cut through azure waters toward the Horn of Africa. Dr. Chen stood in the ship's medical bay, methodically checking her supplies with the precision of someone who understood that preparation meant the difference between life and death in these pirate-infested waters. Her hands moved through the inventory with practiced efficiency, surgical instruments gleaming under fluorescent lights, trauma kits organized with military precision, blood plasma secured in refrigerated units. Each item placed with the care of someone who knew that chaos demanded perfection. "Hope you brought seasickness pills, Doc," came the mocking voice of Jake Viper Morrison, the ship's head of security. He leaned against the doorframe, his custom-built Barrett .50 caliber rifle slung across his shoulder like a badge of authority. The weapon seemed to define him, a symbol of his value aboard a vessel where protection meant everything. Real pirates use real bullets, not band-aids. Maya didn't look up from organizing her medical supplies. Her fingers continued their methodical work, each movement deliberate and controlled, despite the casual cruelty floating through the air around her. "I have what we need, Morrison." His laugh carried the sharp edge of someone who had decided her worth before learning her name. "What we need is someone who can drop targets at 1,000 yards, not patch up holes after the fact." Captain Rex Iron Blackstone entered the medical bay with charts in hand and an expression as hard as his nickname suggested. Everything about the man spoke of someone who had learned that flexibility was a luxury that got people killed in these waters. His eyes swept the medical station with systematic attention. "Final briefing in 5 minutes, he announced, his voice carrying absolute authority. "We're entering the danger zone. Somali pirates have been active in this sector for weeks." The words settled over the room like a familiar weight. These waters had earned their reputation through the blood of crews who had underestimated the speed and ruthlessness of modern pirates. Everyone aboard knew the statistics, knew the risks, knew that some of them might not see port again. Blackstone's eyes fixed on Maya with crushing authority. "Chen, I want absolute clarity here. Your job is medical support, period. That Barrett stays with qualified personnel only." The words struck like physical blows, though Maya's face showed nothing more than professional acknowledgement. Her hands paused briefly on her medical kit, a hesitation so quick that only someone watching carefully would notice. Then her work resumed, steady and methodical as always. Tommy Razor Martinez, Morrison's second in command, appeared beside his boss like an eager shadow. The younger man nodded approval at the security chief's words, adding his own voice to the chorus of dismissal. "Leave the real work to real warriors, medic girl." Near the equipment lockers, Danny Walsh shifted uncomfortably. At 19, this would be his first voyage through waters where modern pirates hunted with military precision, and the fear in his eyes was as obvious as his desperate attempt to hide it. His hands moved restlessly, checking and rechecking gear that had already been inspected multiple times. After the others dispersed for final preparations, Walsh approached Maya's station with the tentative steps of someone seeking reassurance from the only person who had never treated him like a burden. "Doc," he said quietly, uncertainty evident in his young voice, "you ever been scared before entering dangerous waters?" Maya looked up from her supplies, really seeing him for the first time that morning. The tremor in his hands, the way he kept adjusting his life vest, the slight perspiration despite the air-conditioned medical bay. She recognized all the signs of someone whose body was preparing for something his mind hadn't accepted yet. "Fear just means your body is getting ready for something important," she said quietly, her voice carrying unexpected authority that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than medical school. "Control your breathing. 4 counts in, hold for 4, 4 counts out." "Your father teach you that?" Walsh asked. Something painful flickered across his features. "Never knew him." "Mine did." The words came out softer than intended, carrying weight that had nothing to do with standard stress management techniques. For a moment, something distant flickered in her eyes, a memory that belonged to a different version of herself. Then she returned to her preparations, the moment passing like a shadow across still water. 30 minutes later, the times Neptune's Pride times pushed deeper into the Somali basin under a sky that promised heat and the kind of visibility that made snipers dream and security teams pray. The research vessel carried 12 crew members into waters that locals called the graveyard of ships. a name earned through generations of maritime violence. Maya secured herself in the medical station, ostensibly monitoring communications and preparing for potential casualties. But her eyes swept across the horizon with intensity that had nothing to do with looking for injured crew members. Range estimation, wind assessment, visibility calculations, her mind processed tactical information with automatic precision that belonged to training far deeper than emergency medicine. Morrison checked his Barrett with ceremonial care, ensuring everyone saw the weapon that marked him as their primary defense. The rifle was more than equipment to him. It was identity, status, proof of his value, in a world where value was measured in very specific ways. This beauty has effective range out to 2 miles, he announced to no one in particular, satisfaction evident in his voice. Don't worry, Doc. I'll keep the scary stuff away from your first aid kit. The mockery rolled off him easily, practiced and casual. It had become routine, a way of maintaining established order. Morrison was the warrior, Maya was the medic. Roles were clear, boundaries established, hierarchy maintained. Blackstone's voice crackled over the ship's communication system, with authority born from years of commanding vessels in dangerous waters. All crew maintain security protocols. Everyone stays in their assigned role. No heroes, no exceptions. As they pushed deeper into pirate territory, Maya's fingers unconsciously traced something beneath her tactical vest, a small silver pendant that caught the morning light. Something that looked like standard jewelry but felt heavier than sentiment alone could account for. The metal was warm against her skin, carrying weight of memory and training and choices that had shaped her into someone her crewmates had never bothered to truly see. The morning sun climbed higher over water that had claimed too many vessels, and somewhere on that endless blue expanse, pirates were already moving. They approached with the patience of sharks who knew their prey would come to them, closing in with speedboats and weapons that had been proven in countless attacks on merchant vessels and research ships. The times Neptune's pride times pushed forward, like a steel thread being drawn through the eye of a needle, and everyone understood that some threads got cut in the process. The attack came without warning, erupting from the morning calm like lightning from clear sky. 3 high-speed boats materialized on the horizon, their engines screaming across the water with the fury of predators who had found prey far from any help. They moved with professional coordination, approaching from different angles to eliminate escape routes and create overlapping fields of fire. Maya was monitoring radio communications when the first burst of automatic weapons fire raked the research vessel's hull. Bullets sparked off steel plating and shattered windows, filling the air with the distinctive crack and whine of high-velocity rounds seeking flesh and bone. The peaceful morning transformed into chaos and terror as modern pirates closed for boarding. "Contact! Contact!" Blackstone's voice screamed over the ship's intercom as his command training kicked in, trying to impose order on chaos that had no interest in being controlled. All crew to emergency stations. Repel boarders. Morrison was moving before the echo of gunfire had finished bouncing off the water. He grabbed his Barrett and sprinted toward the ship's highest observation deck, seeking elevation advantage for long-range engagement. His voice cut through the chaos with confidence that should have been reassuring. "I've got visual on lead boat, engaging targets." The distinctive boom of the Barrett echoed across the water, a sound that should have brought tactical advantage and enemy casualties. But instead of the confident follow-up everyone expected, Morrison's curse crackled over the radio with pain and frustration. "I'm hit! Shoulders torn up!" His voice had lost all earlier arrogance, replaced by raw honesty of someone discovering mortality. "Can't maintain position. Can't work the rifle." Martinez moved to assist his chief, but concentrated fire from all 3 pirate boats found their range with deadly precision. The young security officer tumbled down metal stairs, his body going limp as consciousness left him before he hit the deck. The Barrett skittered across steel plating with metallic scraping sounds, coming to rest 20 feet from any cover, exposed and abandoned. "Where's our marksman?" Blackstone's desperate voice crackled over communications, his usual command authority fracturing under the weight of watching his crew die. "We need suppressing fire on those boats. Someone get on that rifle." Maya low-crawled toward Morrison's position, pressing herself against bulkheads as bullets sparked off metal inches from her face. When she reached him, blood was seeping through his fingers where he gripped his shoulder, his face pale with shock and dawning realization that invincibility had always been illusion. "How bad is it, Doc?" Morrison asked, though his eyes already knew the answer from the amount of blood pooling beneath him. "Bad enough." Maya was already cutting away his shirt, hands working with practiced efficiency to assess damage. "But you'll live. if we can get you to proper medical facilities." She applied pressure to the wound, feeling torn muscle and shattered bone beneath her fingers. Morrison grimaced as pain shot through his shoulder, but his eyes never left the abandoned rifle. "That Barrett, someone needs to get on it. Someone who can actually use it." He looked at her with desperation, bleeding through pain. "How do you know exactly where those boats are positioned?" The question hung in salt air like smoke from gunfire. Maya's hands had been moving automatically to stop his bleeding, but her eyes had been tracking pirate positions with systematic precision of someone reading tactical situations. She had been unconsciously calculating ranges, wind compensation, target priority, information that had nothing to do with medical training. 3 boats in coordinated formation, she heard herself say, words coming out with military precision. Lead boat, approximately 800 meters. Wind coming southeast at 15 knots. They're using classic pincer movement to eliminate escape routes. She stopped abruptly, realizing what she had revealed. But damage was done. Morrison stared at her through haze of pain and shock, seeing something in her eyes that had never been there before. Or maybe it had always been there, hidden beneath careful facade of medical professionalism. What kind of medic talks like a designated marksman? Before she could answer, Walsh's scream cut through gunfire like blade through flesh. The young crew member had taken a round through his leg, blood pumping out in bright arterial spurts that meant minutes before blood loss became critical. Maya was beside him in seconds, hands working with practiced efficiency to apply tourniquet, fighting against time and physiology to keep him alive. "They're going to kill us all, aren't they, Doc?" Walsh's eyes were wide with terror and shock of seeing his own blood painting the deck beneath him. His young face had gone pale, and she could see him struggling to process that death had come calling with his name on it. Another crew member fell with wet thud and cry that was cut short. Then another. The pirate boats systematically worked through defensive positions with patience of hunters who knew their prey had nowhere to run. Without counter-sniper fire to suppress the attacking vessels, they could pick off the research crew at their leisure. Blackstone's voice over the intercom had gone from commanding to desperate, authority cracking under weight of helplessness. "All crew, we need options. We're getting slaughtered up here. Someone, give me something!" Maya's eyes tracked to the Barrett, lying on exposed deck like lifeline no one could reach. 20 feet of open space separated them from the weapon that could turn the tide. If someone could get to it, if someone knew how to use it, if someone was willing to risk everything for the chance to save everyone else. Morrison followed her gaze, reading something in her expression that made him look at her with new eyes. "Even if you could reach it, Doc, that's not some hunting rifle. Takes years to master that weapon system. Takes training most security personnel never get." "I know what it takes," Maya said quietly, her voice carrying weight that had nothing to do with medical school or shipboard medicine. Something in her tone made Morrison forget about his wounded shoulder for a moment. The quiet medic who had patched him up dozens of times, who never raised her voice, never pushed back against their mockery, was staring at that rifle with eyes of someone who understood exactly what it could do in the right hands. Another explosion rocked the ship as pirates fired rocket-propelled grenades at the bridge. Closer this time. Another scream echoed across the deck. Another crew member down. Another life bleeding out on steel that had absorbed too much violence already. Blackstone's voice crackled over communications one more time, desperation bleeding through static. "If anyone has ideas, this would be a really good time to share them." Maya looked at Walsh, his young face pale from blood loss, but alive because of her quick work with the tourniquet. She looked at Morrison, tough as nails security chief who had never shown her anything but dismissive contempt, now depending on her to keep him breathing. She looked at her crewmates pinned down and dying while she followed orders to stay in her assigned role, to be what others had decided she should be, instead of what she actually was. The silver pendant beneath her tactical vest felt heavy against her chest, weight she had carried for 8 years since the funeral, where they had folded a flag and handed it to a teenage girl whose father had taught her that sometimes healing required a different kind of precision altogether. Time moved differently in the space between life and death. Each second stretched like pulled wire while bullets cracked overhead and her crewmates bled onto the deck. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, could feel each vibration of the ship's engines as she low-crawled toward the abandoned Barrett. 20 feet felt like 20 miles with enemy rounds seeking flesh, but she moved with fluid precision of someone who had done this before, in places her crewmates would never know about. "Chen," Blackstone's voice cut through gunfire like blade through silk, carrying all authority of rank and regulation. "Stand down immediately. That's a direct order." But Maya was already reaching for the rifle, her hands finding familiar weight of weapon that had been both teacher and burden for more years than her crewmates could imagine. The Barrett felt like coming home and betraying everything she had chosen to become, all at the same moment. Her fingers moved across the weapon with automatic familiarity, muscle memory taking over from conscious thought. She chambered a round with movements so practiced they seemed choreographed, each action flowing into the next with mechanical precision. Stock to shoulder, cheek to stock, eye to scope, breathing settling into rhythm. Her father had drilled into her when she was barely old enough to hold the weapon steady. Through the scope, the world transformed into mathematics and physics, wind speed and bullet drop, range estimation and target acquisition. The chaos of the firefight faded into background noise as her training took over, turning her into something her crewmates had never seen before. 847 meters to primary target. Wind coming southeast at 15 knots with gusts to 18. Maritime conditions affecting visibility. The lead pirate boat's gunner materialized in her crosshairs like ghost becoming solid, unaware that death was already calculating precise angle of his destruction. He moved with confidence of someone who believed he held all advantages, someone who had never imagined that the quiet medic lying prone on the deck below possessed skills that could reach out across nearly half a mile and touch him with finality. Maya's breathing slowed to combat rhythm that lived in her muscle memory, inherited from father who had taught her that sometimes saving lives required taking them with surgical precision. Her heartbeat steadied, vision narrowed, and for moments she was 16 again, prone behind this same type of rifle while grizzled Delta Force operator made minute adjustments to her position. "See the target, sweetheart?" Her father's voice echoed across years, clear as if he were lying beside her on the deck. "Be the target, then make the target go away." The first shot thundered across the water like voice of judgment itself, sound carrying over waves and rolling back on itself until it became continuous roar. 847 meters away, the pirate gunner jerked backward and disappeared from his position, his weapon tumbling into ocean as his body followed gravity into dark waters below. Morrison, still bleeding but now staring in absolute disbelief, whispered words that barely carried over echo of gunfire. "Sweet mother of mercy, what was that shot?" But Maya was already acquiring second target, hands working bolt action with mechanical precision. Fresh round, chambered, scope picture acquired, breathing controlled, heart rate steady. Another shooter, different boat, 920 meters. Adjust for increased range, compensate for slight crosswind, account for maritime conditions. The second shot echoed across water with same thunderous authority as first, and another pirate position went silent as death reached out across distance with mathematical certainty. The shooter had been in middle of acquiring his own target when Maya's bullet found him, turning his moment of focus into his final moment of anything at all. "Who in the world is she?" The voice crackled over radio, Martinez having regained consciousness just in time to witness their quiet medic, systematically dismantling entire pirate attack, with shots that belonged in sniper legend, rather than maritime reality. One by one, Maya eliminated targets with surgical precision that defied everything her crewmates thought they knew about her. Each shot was perfect, each kill instantaneous, each enemy position silenced before its occupant had time to understand that death had found their range. Years of suppressed training poured out through her fingertips, guided by muscle memory that had been buried beneath bandages and medical textbooks but never forgotten. Between shots, memories flashed like muzzle flares in her mind, scenes from childhood that had been anything but ordinary. Younger Maya, maybe 16, prone behind this same type of rifle, while battle-hardened man in Delta Force insignia made minute corrections to her stance. Hours spent on remote ranges perfecting techniques, while other teenagers attended school dances and worried about homework assignments. "Your mother thinks I'm pushing you too hard." Her father's voice came back to her across years. "But someday, you might need to save lives with this skill set. Sometimes the only way to heal is to hurt the right people." Flag-draped coffin appeared in her memory, surrounded by men in dress uniforms who spoke in hushed tones about legendary accuracy and missions that would never be declassified. Teenage girl in black dress accepting condolences from warriors who had served alongside her father, men who understood she had inherited more than just his eyes. Her own voice came back harsh with teenage rebellion and pain of loss. "I'm not going to be like him. I'm not going to be killer. I'm going to save lives, not take them." The words had been promised to herself, way of processing grief that felt too large for one person to carry. The ocean fell silent except for echo of her final shot. Last pirate boat eliminated with same clinical precision as first. 7 targets engaged, 7 targets eliminated, 0 misses. The kind of shooting that earned legends and built reputations among people who understood what it meant to reach out across impossible distances and touch someone with finality. Maya carefully engaged rifle safety and set Barrett down with same reverence she had shown her medical equipment that morning. The weapon that had defined her father's career and shaped her childhood now lay silent on deck, having spoken its piece in language that mattered most when everything was online. She reached beneath her tactical vest and pulled out what her crewmates had assumed was simple pendant, but which was actually her father's shooting medal from competition that had taken place before she was born. Silver caught sunlight, reflecting memories of man who had taught her that sometimes greatest act of healing required most precise act of harm. Captain Blackstone approached slowly, his rigid composure completely shattered by what he had just witnessed. The by-the-book officer, who had spent months treating her as nothing more than medic, was now seeing her for what she actually was, and revelation had left him struggling to process gap between assumption and reality. As he stopped beside her position, he did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He rendered slow, respectful salute. "Dr. Chen," he said quietly, voice carrying weight that had nothing to do with rank and everything to do with recognition. "I owe you an apology I can never adequately express. We all do." Maya picked up her medical pack and moved toward Walsh, who was staring at her with mixture of awe and confusion that seemed to sum up entire crew's reaction. Young crew member who had sought her reassurance that morning was now seeing her through completely different eyes, trying to reconcile gentle medic with deadly marksman. "How long have you been able to shoot like that, Doc?" Walsh asked, voice carrying wonder and something that might have been relief at discovering their quiet medic was actually most dangerous person aboard. "Long enough," she said, kneeling to check his tourniquet and assess wound for complications. "But I chose to heal instead of hurt. Today I had to do both, and I hope I never have to again." Morrison, still gripping wounded shoulder but now looking at her with something approaching reverence, shook his head in amazement. "Why didn't you ever tell us who you really were? Why let us treat you like you were less than what you are?" Maya looked up from Walsh's wound, meeting eyes of each crewmate who had dismissed her, underestimated her, treated her like she was weakest link in chain that had turned out to be anchored by her strength. Her voice carried no anger, no bitterness, just quiet certainty of someone who had always known exactly who she was. "You never asked what I could do," she said simply, returning to medical work with same focused attention she had given to eliminating enemy positions. "You only cared about what you thought I was supposed to do." As rescue helicopters appeared on horizon, rotors beating against ocean wind like mechanical heartbeats, Maya returned to what she had always chosen to be: medic, healer, someone who had decided that saving lives mattered more than taking them. But now her crewmates understood something fundamental about woman they had served alongside for months without truly seeing. She had not become medic because she could not be warrior. She had become medic despite being most lethal warrior among them, because she had chosen different path than one her training had prepared her for. The Barrett lay beside her, offered silently by Morrison as permanent assignment, recognition that she had earned right to carry weapon that marked elite status. Maya looked at it for a long moment, then shook her head with same gentle certainty she brought to treating wounds. "I know who I am," she said, securing last of Walsh's bandages and preparing him for evacuation.